So I have a general passive obsession with video game music. In the last video that I made, I was talking about a specific piece of music from the original Legend of Zelda game, and the origin and background for how that piece was created. For this one, I'm talking about a different Legend of Zelda game, the music from it in general, but also one specific piece of music. And this actually splits into two different game soundtracks, because what I'm talking about is The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. Now, Link's Awakening was originally for the Nintendo Game Boy. It's one of the oldest Zelda games, the fourth one released. The music for The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening is very interesting. Koji Kondo, the composer of the original Legend of Zelda game and A Link to the Past, was not involved in Link's Awakening. It was three different people. Kozumi Totaka, he might be best known now for his work on Animal Crossing. He even had a character made in his likeness in the game. Minako Hamano, whose most famous piece of work is probably Super Metroid or Metroid Zero Mission. And lastly, Kozue Ishikawa, who probably is the least well known for her works now. She worked for Nintendo for a long while. She worked on the original 3 Wario Land games, but it looks like she stepped away from the industry in the early 2000s. These three composers, I don't know how much they met together, but the music in Link's Awakening isn't so very uniform. There's a lot of variety. Coming from 3 separate composers, that makes a lot of sense. On top of that, all of these pieces had to be very minimal. The Game Boy, like the Nintendo Entertainment System, was very limited when it came to what it could process for audio. 4 audio channels, 2 of which were pre-programmed, one of which was a sample, and another one is a noise channel. So you can't have more than 4 noises happening at a given time. Now, you can accomplish an awful lot with that, but because of that, these pieces were stripped down to their bare bones, and if they had a different premise, they were going to be very different. Jumping ahead from 1993 to 2019, the remake of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening is released on the Nintendo Switch. Now, this remake is gorgeous. It is so cute, it is so beautiful, it is so well done. Just the art style alone, everything kind of looking like toys, fantastic. The music very well matches the aesthetic design of the game. I keep on using the word cute, but it is so charming. The composition feels like that of a chamber ensemble, more than just a few instruments, but not a full orchestra. You really feel each instrument being played while you're listening to it. With it having a more broad spectrum of what it can do with the sound, a lot of work was done to make the soundtrack a lot more cohesive. The differences of styles between the incidental music, the overworld music, and the dungeon music is a lot less stark. They're able to add a lot to make these match. And I think that that is a huge accomplishment. And one interesting thing about it is listening to especially like the dungeon themes. You have chiptune inserts from the original game backed by more orchestral instruments. I especially love what they did with the Angler's Tunnel, with the euphonium and the strings, while keeping in that mysterious chiptune line. Beautifully pulled off. Slightly biased because the euphonium playing reminds me a lot of how my dad plays. And also the face shrine, the way that they make this brooding, beautiful, dark, dreary, kind of reminds me of something from Prokofiev's Romeo and Juliet. It's so emotive, but dark and mysterious, and also with that chiptune line, like, I wouldn't have come to that conclusion for, okay, what do we add to the chiptune line? It's genius work. And I think that that is so cool of what you can do to remix a song, to add to it, to flesh it out. Conversely, though, there's one piece in particular that I think excels in the Game Boy version, which is good, very good on the Switch, but made me start thinking about some music theory. In, let's call it classical music, there is a genre under that umbrella called the string quartet. Now, the string quartet has had a couple of centuries of people using it as a flex, composers using it as a flex. The idea is this, that you should be able to accomplish with a string quartet whatever you can with an orchestra. You just need the chops to do it. Like, theoretically, 2 violins, viola, and cello together should be all that you need if you're a good enough composer. Citation needed. I remember hearing about it in a Robert Greenberg lecture. I've heard it other places, but I don't have it on hand. Theoretically, with these 4 instruments, you should be able to accomplish anything that you would want to with more options. And that leads me to Tal Tal Heights by Kazuo Ishikawa. When I listen to this, it never ceases to amaze me that there are only ever 4 things happening at once. There is just so much energy and drive. Its use of arpeggios is very common in music from the Nintendo Entertainment System and the Game Boy, because with those limitations, my style developed to be like, hey, if we can only have so many sounds at once, but we can move 2 different sounds. So use of arpeggios to make chords was very common, and that was applied here. But with it, like, just listening right here, its use of how it feels so full here, and then it just drops to only the drum line, and then 1 arpeggio line, and it's so smart. Its use of silence, and in comparison to what sounds so full with only 4 sounds, it's nuts. I think that Kazuo Ishikawa should be talked about a whole lot more because it's so good. It's perfect. And this makes me think of, it was either in the teaching company's course on Franz Liszt or Mozart, they were comparing those 2. With Franz Liszt, if you miss half of the notes in playing one of his pieces, the audience might not notice. But if you mess up 1 note in a Mozart piece, you drive a train through it. There is some amount of padding and defense that can come from having more and more instruments, but at the same time, like, if you're adding to what's already perfect, you only stand to lessen it. And I want to be very clear, I am not bad-mouthing the people that had the task of adapting Tal Tal Heights to fit in with the rest of the remake game. I think they did a fantastic job. But I do think it's a really interesting example of how you can flesh out music in a very limited game at such a level of success, but still stand to lose something for the elements that were done perfectly. I guess what I'm saying is, there is so much that you can do by shaking up, adding, reimagining, enhancing things. But hey man, you can't beat perfection. And it comes to, maybe another conversation about limitations in art. I think with Link's Awakening, the 1993 game for the Game Boy and the 2019 game for the Nintendo Switch, you can see that there's a lot of value in seeing where you can go in new directions, enhancing things, reimagining things, broadening your horizons for possibilities. But you can still do incredible things with extreme limitations. And so good, in fact, that you might not be able to top it. And I think that's really cool. Anyways, I hope that made sense. I don't want to record this again. If you liked it, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, or if you'd like more videos on stuff like this. This is stuff that I love to research, I love to learn about, and I don't know, I'm thinking about video game music a lot anyway. So yeah, just glad to get this off my chest, if nothing else, because I've been thinking about this for a while.